So what I wanted to really look at tonight in this time that we've got together is the perhaps one of the fastest and simplest ways to stop the mind. And I'm not talking about some kind of breathing exercise, although there's nothing wrong with those, of course, they're very beneficial, or some kind of spiritual exercise that we can do that actually brings the mind to a halt temporarily, because there are lots of ways to do that, and quite a lot of them are very effective, of course, but the downside to that is mind often starts back up again with even more noise than there was before we even began the exercise. So what I'm talking about here is a full and permanent stopping of the mind, so that from that point forward there is simply a few functional thoughts. Don't forget to turn the oven off, don't forget to lock the door, or you're about to forget your keys, or some, those kind of thoughts that are useful. Turn left here rather than right, it's quicker. All that kind of thing. Those thoughts don't really intrude on our silence. What I'm really talking about is the habitual thoughts of the mind that go around and round and kind of torment us over and over. And is there a way then to bring this kind of thought activity to begin to slow down, to begin to allow it to come to a complete stop? How do we go about doing that? And for me, when I looked at in my own journey when mind was quietest, it was quite surprising when that was. It was quite surprising when that actually occurred. It was almost accidental when the mind first went quiet a few times. Of course, I tried to figure out how that had happened and tried to make it happen again, which made the mind even noisier. It's like it's got scared, it's something inside said, hang on a minute. Because my mind, and I actually believed at one point that I wouldn't exist if I stopped thinking. And that seems weird to me now, but it was very real and felt very true and terrifying. Like, can a human being even exist without thoughts going on? That seemed like a real thing that I needed to look at. So first of all, let's say it's absolutely possible for a human being to exist without thinking. It's possible to go about your life and to be just experiencing. So just listening, just watching, like now, not necessarily having to conceptualize about what's going on in this moment, and how to use what's going on in this moment to our advantage, or how we should have done something differently, or what we could do and didn't do, and all of that. You know how it goes, the mind. It's always talking as if we are this doer of actions. And a lot of the talkingness of the mind is about how to make sure we do the right things to get the results that we want. But of course, if we're not actually a separate being doing these things, if we're not deciding which thoughts are going to come in our mind, if we're not deciding which actions our body is going to do, if we're not deciding what words even we're going to say, they're just arising spontaneously. There's no thinker of thoughts, no doer of action, no planner. Planning happens, no decider. A decision, a thought appears in the mind when it's the right time. A lot of the mind's thinking then is coming from this idea that we've got to get this right. Whatever this is. So this could be your awakening, it could be your job interview, it could be finding the right person to spend your life with, it could be finding the right place to put your kids in school. On and on and on it goes. All about making decisions and this imaginary doer. And along with that doer, thinking that we're the doer, comes a great responsibility to make sure that we do it right. And of course, if you listen to your mind, pretty much most of the time you don't do it right. And one thing then that we can begin to see, one trick to undercut this thinkingness, is to begin to see that there isn't actually a doer present. There's no separate being who is actually deciding anything. There is only the one supreme self. And in that supreme self, that one being experiencing itself through all of these human bodies, actions are just happening, words are just arising, and our actions, thoughts, experiences just all unfolding spontaneously. Even if the thought arises in your mind, I'm going to do this, this is what I'm going to do. That thought just appeared from nowhere. And nobody made it happen, it just appeared in your mind. So, excuse me. We can begin to get a taste of this if we begin to observe our mind as it's thinking. And it's probably the last thing you want to do right now. Probably the thing that I want to do more than anything is just to get away from the mind. But trying to get away from the mind only makes it noisier. If we can take a really good look at it, why are we so convinced that there's a doer of actions and a decider of decisions and a thinker of thoughts? What is the thinker? Where is it? If you were in charge of the content, if you really had any control over your mind at all directly, like we think we do, we would just simply stop thinking, wouldn't we? If you could do anything to turn your mind off, you would have done it by now. And if you could do make a change to stop yourself saying that wrong thing that you say to that person, you would do that by now. What's actually happening then? Why are we so convinced that there's a doer, that there's a thinker, that there's a decider? Because if we can really get this deep down, then at least 95% of the thoughts that we have each day will disappear. Because if you look at the thoughts, if you think back for a moment now, if you remember now, if you can, the last thing that you were thinking about before you came onto Satsang, whatever that was, what your latest problem is, what you're obsessing over how to fix, and all of what involves this legendary separate self that's deciding what to do. Even if we apply this to awakening, enlightenment itself, there's an idea that I've got to choose the right practices, choose the right teacher, choose the right satsang, choose the right time to practice, choose how I'm doing the practice. All of those things, right? It becomes very complicated then. And if I don't get any one of those right, I won't get the desired result. And what if something very different is occurring? What if you're just actually here? That's all you're doing. And you're watching thoughts arise in the mind and emotions arise in the body. You're watching your body spontaneously do activities, actions. Spiritual practice is just occurring by itself with no one doing it. Even if the thought arises, I'm going to attend satsang. Did that cause you to actually attend satsang? Or was it just a momentary commentary on what was going to happen anyway? So the thought, the commentary of the mind is just going on alongside reality, which is just happening in the meantime. And I'm not trying to make thoughts useless, because some thoughts are very useful. But I am trying to point to this fact that this imaginary doer and thinker of thoughts, if you had a really negative thought about someone, if you had a really critical, judgmental thought in your mind right now about someone, Can you notice the tendency to think I shouldn't have thought that, as if you had any control over it at all? Or if you criticize your own self in your thoughts, judgmental of your own self. Is that I'd like to be more loving, I shouldn't think thoughts like that about myself, as if you had any control over that at all. So where does this leave us then? Are we just drifting through life, duty bound to watch whatever thoughts go through the mind, whatever activities and actions go on in the body? Are we just powerless over what's going on in our experience? Do we have any control at all? Do we have any free will? How can we steer and guide our life? What's even the point of coming to satsang if there is no control over what the mind is doing and the body is doing? Well, we don't have this control, this free will as a separate being, because that separate being doesn't exist. I'm not deciding what words come out of my mouth right now. It's just, they're just coming. But as we come to realize that there is no doer of actions, there's no separate being orchestrating my life. There's just life unfolding as me through this body-mind spontaneously. And that unfoldment is always moving towards more of what I do want and less of what I don't want. Naturally, on its own, life wants to experience expansion. Every desire that I think I have as a separate being is really life's desire, expanding. And as I realize that deeper and deeper, what tends to happen then is the quality of my thoughts changes. The quality and the type of actions I have access to then changes. So while I think I'm a separate being, well, I'm really convinced that I'm deciding everything, then I might make some decisions that I regret, might say some things that I seem to regret. All experiential evidence, the illusionary evidence of the separate being that keeps going around and around then. And it really seems that I'm deciding what to say because I said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing. As it really gets clear that there's really nothing, no such entity as a separate being. There's just the one self that's here, and there's a body-mind moving around in it, doing actions and saying things and thinking things. Then the thoughts and actions and words tend to be the ones that we'd want anyway. So indirectly, we have this complete control as the self, as the one being, as the separate self. We think we have control and we absolutely have none. The free will that the separate sense of self is always chasing after and defending doesn't exist anyway in that way. So just taking a moment, let's just experience this right now. And let's just watch and see what the next thought is that pops into our mind. Let's just watch. And whatever that thought is, when it pops in there, notice that you didn't instigate it. It just arrived unbidden and spends as long as it exists for and then disappears. Let's just watch and see. And most of us can't go more than a couple of seconds without mind saying something. And that's normal, of course, at first. Noticing while we were waiting there as well, you didn't have to instruct your lungs to breathe. They were just doing that anyway. Your eyes are blinking by themselves. Your body's repairing itself and digesting food and doing all the things it does all by itself, just like it's thinking by itself spontaneously. All these activities of the body and of the mind are just happening while you watch. Do you really have any control then in the way that we've been led to believe? Is it really your responsibility then to make the mind stop? Ironically, paradoxically, when we deeply realize there is nothing we can do about the mind to make it quiet, absolutely nothing we can do. We have the space it's appearing in, the body and the mind. And we really surrender into that. There is nothing I can do about anything in my experience, actually. Then everything begins to change into what we would like it to be anyway. It's as if this idea of an imaginary doer has been slowing down, getting in the way of what's trying to unfold, what life wants to do anyway. What I want is what life wants. My life is moving the way that I want it to go anyway. If I can simply come to recognize deeply that I don't have that kind of control. For me, when I first recognized this was really terrifying. I can't stop my mind thinking. I can't let go of any karmic patterns. I can't do anything to reach awakening. I can't do anything to lose the weight that I wanted to lose. I can't do anything about the state of my emotions at that point. And I really let that in there. There's nothing I can do. Why? Because I'm not a someone, I'm not a doer. And all of those things that I want is really what life is already moving me towards. It's already trying to occur and unfold. As I let go of this idea that I'm got to manage that process somehow. What if the only thing in the way of awakening was the someone that was trying to get there? And the last thing that any human being wants to do is to feel helpless or powerless. So we don't want to give up this imagined control that we have. But if you try it just for a moment, there's nothing you can do as a separate being to reach enlightenment. Why? Because you already are where you're trying to get to. There's nobody moving towards it. There's just it. And your body and mind appearing inside it. So I'd urge you just to try to take that a little bit deeper into your heart. There's nothing you can do as a separate being. But the other side of that is there's nothing you need to do, actually. You can't even take any action to undo this imaginary being because it doesn't exist. This imaginary separate sense of someone. Can we be really radically honest in this moment, admit that everything I think I'm doing as a separate being, I'm not. Life is doing it through my body and mind, actually. The one being is doing it, life, synonyms. This moved from being intensely frustrating and terrifying to be actually quite freeing when I took it deeper. If I'm not doing anything in the way that I think, or I have to be honest, I admit I'm doing all of this, the whole universe, I have to be honest about that. Not just taking responsibility for one body, mind's actions, but recognizing I'm doing all of this. I'm doing none of it, or I'm doing all of it, whichever one feels most right for you. Then there's this deep relaxation because I can't screw it up. I also can't resist awakening. Resistance comes from this imaginary being. It also means that it's already unfolding. The progress that I think I've made as a separate being was what was going to happen anyway, and probably a lot faster without this idea of a someone getting it right or getting it wrong most times.